Okay, I'm hoping that everybody can see that. Just going to pop it onto slideshow. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see the slideshow in front of them there. So welcome everybody to the summer joint SENCO briefing. We do have another busy agenda. I have tried to space it out for you. We do have a couple of amendments this morning. I will kind of let you know the content hasn't changed, but we do have a couple of different speakers. But the sort of flow of the morning and the content has stayed the same. So there's just a couple of speakers that have changed on the agenda. So welcome to the SENCO briefing. I'm just going to move on to the next slide for you. You have had the briefing, but there's the briefing agenda, but there's just an overview of what's coming up this morning for you. Just to give you a bit of a heads up, I think you all know, but at the moment we are subject to the Ofsted and CQC local area partnership inspection of SEND services. So I really just want to thank all of you for your involvement of this. I'm sure all of you somewhere are involved in the inspection, and the inspection finishes on the 30th of June. So that could be why we've got some changes of speakers this morning for you, because everyone's really busy in the background doing lots of work around the Ofsted inspection. So what we're going to do, it's just about 25 to, so I'm not going to stop. I'm going to continue to talk. I'm going to jump straight on with the agenda. So we have CIT have kindly come along this morning virtually to meet with you. So we've got Kate and Sue, and they're going to be talking to you around some CIT updates, and you also have an opportunity to ask some questions as well. So I've got their slides. And I'm going to hand straight over to you, Kate and Sue, if that's okay.
Yeah, there is a slide just before that, Lisa, actually. I think,
Oh,
is it just the opening
sorry.
slide? Oh, it's only that one. You need
Yeah,
to see the
all
smiley
right.
face, though. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. I'm just popping everybody into the corner now, so I can't see everybody's faces. I've just got my
No
presentation
problem.
in front of me. So yeah, thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you everybody for having me. Yeah, my name is Kate Farrow. I am the team leader of the Communication Interaction Team, or SIT. I've been around for quite a while now, and there were lots of familiar faces in the room there. I have got one or two colleagues with me today. Certainly Sue Locke is here today. And as I move through this brief presentation, please feel free to post a question in the chat or raise your hand. Lisa and Sue will just be keeping an eye on that as it's out of my my sight at the moment. Or of course you can email Sue or I at the end, and we will always do our best to try and help. I've got one other colleague in the room, that's Dylan, my Cocker Spaniel actually, but he's usually quite well behaved at this time, so hopefully he won't be making an appearance. So the aim really for this presentation from me is to just give you an overview of CIT, where we sit in SEND services, what we do, how you can access supports. And this is probably a refresher for many of you, but I do hope that it will answer one or two questions for others too. So if we can move on, please, to the next slide. Thank you. So where do we sit in SEND in children's services? So there's a very singular flow diagram there, which shows our route, CIT's route through children's services, education, participation and skills, SEND services and CIT at the end there. So CIT is just one of the advisory teams that sits within and alongside other SEND services. So those other services will include the educational psychologists, early years inclusion team, PATS, the sensory support team, 0 to 25 team. I don't know if I've missed anybody out there. Children's disability team. So we're just one of those teams. And schools will be aware that children's services, and particularly access to SEND support, is in a period of quite significant change. Debbie Degnan was appointed just last month as the interim SEND service manager for a period of 6 months to oversee that SEND review process. And these changes are being communicated to schools and to head teachers through a variety of approaches. So there are meetings that are headed up by Sharon Muldoon, our Director of Children's Services, other senior leaders, for example, through briefings such as this one or through the school's bulletin. And we will, of course, continue to be updated. So change includes a reorganisation of teams, and we are one of those teams. So it's reviewing how the systems for accessing support. And for example, you will all know about the early help and the SEND helpline as a new way of working and accessing support. And I'm not going to say much more about that because I can see that it's part of the agenda for an update there. But how CIT will sit alongside these new ways of working is still a little bit unclear at the moment. And again, we will all be kept updated as the SEND review works its way through and we get kind of decisions on that. So next slide, please. So who are we? So CIT is a very small team now. We are just 6 people. We have depleted a little in size over recent years, and we have a number of unfulfilled vacancies at this time. And I do remain optimistic that these vacancies will be filled. The communication interaction team supports children with SLCN needs, that big umbrella term. So the team is split into 2 sides. So simply put, we have a language needs side and a social communication or an ASE side. The language side of the team is Sue and Joe, and they're shown in green on the slide in front of you. And they support children with a language-based need. So that's those children that are presenting with difficulties in understanding and or using spoken language. And it's certainly not to be confused with speech clarity or articulation. And those children should be supported by your speech and language therapist. The children
sorry
that
to interrupt you.
Sure.
Sorry. On my screen, I've got links to educational psychology. Is my screen showing something different to what you're seeing?
Yeah, it should be. It should be this slide before, Lisa. Apologies, everybody.
I'm wondering if that's it. I don't know if it's my fault, whether it's moving on at a different speed to what you're seeing.
That's the one we're on.
Yeah, right. Apologies.
Okay, rewind, people. I'm going to pop you all back in the corner because it's little. I couldn't see that, Lisa. Sorry. So you can see the two. Yeah, are we on the same
green
page
and
now?
the yellow boxes.
Yeah, thank you.
Apologies.
No, that's all right, Lisa. No worries. So you can see the 2 sides of the team there. We've got the green side. The left side is the language side of the team. So that's Sue and Joe supporting children with a language-based need. So these might actually be children that have got a diagnosis of developmental language disorder, DLD. And the other side of the team is myself, Dion, Chris and Carolyn, and we're shown in that blue and the orange side of the team. And we make up the social communication side. So this includes children that might go on and have that diagnosis of autism. Children might be finding school really tough, and particularly with regards to their social interactions. Of course, sometimes children don't present in a very discreet way, and there is overlaps across both sides of the team. And we do, of course, speak to each other. Sometimes we even meet up in person. And we often have to share shared discussions, shared involvements. Each school will have a CIT link person from both sides of the team. So, for example, myself and Sue Locke are the link for Pennycross Primary School. So Sue is the CIT language link for all primary schools in the city. I always need to take a moment to think about that. All primary schools, that's a big caseload. Joe Robinson is the language link for all secondary schools in the city. I'm the CIT and the ASC link for 27 primary schools in Plymouth. I'm also the team leader. Claire Hetherington, incidentally, the manager for the EP service, is also my line manager. Dion is the ASC link practitioner for a number of secondary schools in the city, and Chris and Carolyn share a mix of primaries and secondaries. We are indeed a very small team, but we do work closely together and we do our best to support each other and, more importantly, to support you. So next slide, please, Lisa. This is links to educational psychology.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So I think it's important I say a little bit about our links to the EP service. So CIT and the EP service are working much more closely together. We always have done, but I think we've really tried to emphasize this. And since autumn 2022, the EP service and CIT have adopted this much closer relationship. 2 other advisory teams actually as well, which is the sensory support team and the early years inclusion service, also working much more closely with the EPs. And I do hope that this is evident through some of those PCMs, those planning consultation meetings, and through discussions and communications, that you have a sense of that more collaborative planning for provision and support, that we're part of shared discussions. In the background, we are sharing training now and we're sharing team meetings. So we are working very, very much more closely together. And as I've already said, Claire Hetherington, known for a long time as the manager of the EPs, is now also our line manager. So the last bullet point that you can see there is EPSAT, and will it catch on? Because this is a term, a new acronym that we're starting to use within our teams, and it's starting to filter out a little bit, and that's Educational Psychology Service and advisory teams. We had a school survey last term. We've had 70 plus responses already. Really, really grateful for those people that have responded already. And if you are still sat on one of those surveys and you can find a moment to complete it and return it, then we would be really grateful. We are looking at these really closely, and we're using the information and the feedback to improve and shape our service, so we can make the best of our small team to give the best responses possible. Next slide, please. So what can CIT offer? So termly consultations, always thinking about that graduated approach to inclusion. So I need to say a little bit more about this. So the termly consultations, for many of us, that will be, for many of you, that will be face-to-face termly meetings with a CIT link practitioner and the EP link person. So for some of us, it can be customized. It doesn't need to be at those formal termly meetings. It can be by a separate phone call or a separate Teams consultation. But for the language side, it is quite different. There just isn't the capacity for Sue and Joe to join all of those PCM meetings in person. They are just two people, after all, supporting across the whole city. So last term, CIT started trialling a slightly different approach. And the consult will start with Sue and Joe sending out planning sheets to SENCOs to get updates on the children that are already known to CIT. So for the language side, that is the first point of the consult, and it's the gateway potentially to any more detailed conversations. If children are discussed at a face-to-face planning meeting with the ASC link person, and a language need is looking as more evident for the child, then children will be noted on the planning sheet, usually just with initials, and the advice will be given for the school SENCO to contact Sue and Joe directly. And the responsibility will be for school to make that contact first. So at any consultation stage, at any consult where children are discussed by name, we will of course just check that parents are aware of this discussion and that schools have obtained the necessary consent. This is particularly important if we need to retain any notes. We can use initials if needed, if you wanted to discuss children more anonymously and just seek some signposting. But ideally, we would anticipate that as a specialist service, the school and family are already very much involved in regular reviews, and this is just a natural step to say to parents, is it okay if we can discuss this at a consultation with CIT? So with our reduced workforce at present, we do need to work much more smartly, and we're doing our very best to maximise all of our support to schools. It is increasingly difficult, however, for us to work directly. It is increasingly difficult for us to work directly with children over time. And ideally, if we can identify an adult in school, then it's CIT can work with that person to help with strategies, to signpost, to model resources, to model practice, etc. And of course, we always do our best to attend Team Around Me meetings or other meetings and respond to emails. So I'm just going back to the slide in front of you. We give advice through those consultations with SENCOs or to teachers, a follow-up meeting with teachers or with support workers. We continue to do assessment of children's needs and give all the appropriate advice, feedback, records of involvements, reports, etc. Hopefully we're coming up with strategies and resources, and we're modelling some of that or signposting as to where you can access those things. And we do our best to be part of those wider team meetings that involve families to support that positive relationship between families and schools. So through statutory processes, through Team Around Me meetings or EHATs. And we do still offer training, you know, so talk to us at those consultation meetings about needs that you might have in school. And this can be from a small group of people in school to whole school or even across mats. And it all starts with discussion at that consultation meeting. And the final bullet point there is we do support with transition across all of those phases. It is a specialist level because I'm very aware that relationships between primaries and secondaries and provision within schools is robust, it's good. So it's at that specialist level that we can be consulted on around transitions. The communication interaction team do have a presence on the online directory. We are updating it all of the time. The language side of our pod is particularly well resourced. That's all thanks to Sue. She's done a great job there. So please check there first and see what CIT can offer from there. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. Okay, are we there, Lisa? Let me just.
Yeah. How to request support.
That's right. How to request support from CIT. So 3 simple steps, really. We've got the consultation stage, then we've got the request more help form, and then that goes to the access panel for it to be processed. So that consult stage is absolutely essential. Any request for involvement from CIT should always start with a conversation, a consultation. Ideally, that will be at that planning consultation meeting, but if you get a bit of a curveball and something comes kind of mid-term or you need to have a discussion, then please phone us, email us, we can set up a Teams meeting. And that's obviously especially important for Sue and Joe, who's not part of those PCM meetings anyway. Parental consent is needed, certainly if names are being used and notes are being taken and saved. And it's at that consultation meeting that we will look at the strengths and the needs of a child. We'll talk about what has been tried at a universal and a targeted level under that graduated approach. We'll ask about how effective those interventions have been, what other services are involved currently and historically, what has their involvement been and their impact, and particularly, of course, what support school are looking for from CIT. And the outcome from that first part, that consultation part, it might be that there is just further advice or the sharing of a resource or signposting, or it could be agreed that actually there is a role for CIT and that request more help form needs to be completed. And that can be found on the pod under Access More Help or on the CIT homepage. If some of you have downloaded a form previously, then it might be on the form that it says that those forms need to be returned to the gateway, and that's not accurate information. Our pod and the Access More Help page does reflect the correct information. Forms need to go to Access Early Help. So that might be something you just need to go back and check if you've got something saved in your school systems. So the Request More Help form needs to be completed. We do ask that it's completed along with the SLCN checklist and any other supporting evidence. So you might have supporting evidence through the quick checkers on the graduated approach or through provision maps or through TAMS, for example. That SLCN checklist, I think, is a really useful resource to really hone in your thinking, perhaps even before the consultation or to support the consultation stage. You could perhaps think about it as an observation tool when you're really thinking that a specialist response is needed. So that Request More Help form then comes into Access Early Help where it's logged, and then it's considered at a weekly panel meeting. It should be a very smooth process from there on because the consultation meeting before has kind of agreed that pathway for it to be processed and accepted. Outcome letters will be shared very soon after, with letters going to parents and emails going to school, or mostly that's the SENCO or whoever the referrer was. So that's the request for support from CIT kind of timeline there, the steps to get there. I think it's worth just saying a little bit about closures. So you've accessed support. Closures should always be discussed at a PCM meeting, at that planning meeting, or through that caseload information sheet that the language side are using. Closures should always be agreed. It's never done to a child or to a school. Just bear with me a moment. My mouse is stuck. Thank you. So when we take on a child as active onto our caseload, there will be a period of it being active, of that child being active. There may be a period then where we're just monitoring, and school and CIT are just monitoring. And typically, if it's at the monitoring stage for 2 terms, then we will think about having that discussion about closing that child to CIT if it's been no involvement. Hope that's all okay. Next slide, please. So we've got the question slide, Lisa.
Yep, some questions. Yep.
So some questions at CIT are often asked. So the first one, do I need parental consent to discuss a child? So I've touched on this already. So ideally, yes, for ease of recording and reviewing, etc., for note taking and for us for saving that information. But we can discuss with no name and just have initials. Incidentally, if you're from a secondary school here and your request is for a child over 13, so 13 years and plus, we do actually need child's consent as well. Not just parent consent, but we need child consent too. The second question, does a child need a diagnosis to access CIT? So that might be, for example, DLD for Sue's side of the team, or autism for me. And the answer is no. It's the presentation of need that's really important. It doesn't matter about the diagnosis at all. It's how is that child presenting? What does the SLCN checklist indicators tell you? What does that quick checker tell you in the graduated approach? What does the need? Lots of families and parents don't want to go down that pathway of exploring a diagnosis. And of course, we need to respect that. So it's always based on presentation. Can CIT attend a TAM or similar without a referral being in place? That's an absolute bold capital letters. Yes, we can. This is often actually the preferred route. We could see that as the first stage, as the consultation stage, but it's actually broader and giving us more information because the parent is present too. So it is a preferred route in many cases. And of course, at that team around meeting, one of the outcomes will be to decide whether a formal referral to CIT is appropriate or not. So we wouldn't normally attend a second team around me because that decision should have been reached on that first one. So yes, we can. Question 4 there is how long will a child remain open to CIT? So of course, that's just very, very variable. And I've said already that the rule of thumb here is if there's no involvement over 2 terms, then a child can be closed to CIT. We don't do that without discussion. We do that in consultation with you. And if we feel that in term 3 or 4, there is potentially a you know, an event happening, maybe there's a key transition, for example, and it makes sense to keep that child open to manage that potential bump in the road, then of course we will keep a child open a little bit longer. 5 there, question 5. Can CIT support at home? Typically no, not at present. However, we do recognise that home and school are intrinsically linked and they often impact on each other. And therefore we do give advice to support at home. But ideally we would like to do that in a team around me meeting. So we might talk, for example, about bedtime routines or transitions to and from schools routines, because we recognise, of course, that that has an impact on their school day. So it would be, I think, foolhardy for us to ignore that. What we don't do is support with parenting at home, in the home. And the last one there is, do we work with children with a Devon or Cornwall home address? Now, this one always is a head scratcher for me, and I think most other people too. And we always have to kind of clear our desks, empty our head, and think very logically about it. I have drawn up cross-border guidelines, and should anybody wish to see a copy of that, then just please let me know, and I can share that guidance with you. So in trying to keep it black and white, and it isn't, but trying to keep it black and white, CIT works with schools in Plymouth schools. And if the child is at a non-statutory level of support, The home address is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. So if there is no EHCP, there is no EHCP needs assessment pending, then it's absolutely a Plymouth school, CIT, Plymouth services responding, irrespective of the home address. Now, if the child lives in Devon or Cornwall and a request is being made for statutory assessment, or the child has moved into your school with a statutory assessment, with a plan in place already, then it is a Devon or Cornwall response for services and for support. Now, there is that little grey area. There may be that Plymouth services have been supporting for a time and it's escalated to statutory level, in which case this is the grey bit in the middle, and I would encourage that there is a discussion around all involved, because at the heart of it, there needs to be continuity in the best interests of the child. But we would have to involve our counterparts in Devon and Cornwall to make sure there is a shared agreement before there is that more formal handover to the correct local authority. So I hope that's clear. As I say, please ask for the guidance if you think that you might be affected by this. So next slide, and I think that's my last slide. I think that is in a nutshell what CIT do. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for having us again. We'd really love to hear any feedback, comments, questions, and of course email myself or Sue if you think that we can answer anything outside of this meeting. And that's it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kate. I am conscious we've just run over just very slightly.
Sorry.
I don't know, that's absolutely fine. So you should have given yourself longer. You're very popular. I'm just going to just stop sharing just for a second, just to see if there is anything in the chat, or if anybody just wants to ask just for a couple of minutes. I know we are running over. If anybody has any questions. Is there anything in the chat? I don't think there is, no. Any questions for CIT?
Nothing?
Hmm?
I should just pop my email in the chat. I'll just pop my email in the chat if anybody wants to just make a note of that. I mean, anybody that I'm connected with will have that anyway, but if there's anybody else wants to email me directly, then you know, of course, I'm happy for you to do that.
Yeah, of course, wonderful. And this morning we do have an evaluation form as well. I've popped the link into the chat as well. I know it has gone out to you, but it's always handy to have it in the chat. So please do complete the evaluation at the end of the morning. If you do have any questions at all for Sue or for Kate, you can also pop them onto the evaluation, and then I can always send those on as well. So it's another opportunity as well. Brilliant. Okay, well, that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much to both of you for your time today. And I think I can speak on behalf of all the SENCOs to say that, you know, your work is really invaluable. I think SENCOs, you know, just wouldn't cope without you. So thank you so much for your time. You know, it's, yeah, absolutely fantastic, the work that you do with them. So thank you so much, and hope to see you both of you again soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Brilliant. Right, so we're going to move on. We're 10 minutes behind, but we will make up the time, so don't panic, we'll be fine. We're always behind at this stage, I think. So next on the agenda, we have early help, and we have Naomi has come to join us today on behalf of John, who has been called away. So hopefully Naomi is here. I apologise, Naomi.
I am.
We are running.
Hello.
Brilliant. Apologies, we are running a little bit behind, so hopefully that is okay with you. Do you have
That's
something
absolutely fine, not a problem.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Do you have a presentation that you'd like to share?
I do, and I was just about to share that. So if everybody's happy,
lovely.
I will look at that now.
Thank
you. Okay, so forgive me, you might see yourself shortly, or hopefully. Can everybody see that?
Yes, we can.
Everybody, fantastic. Thank you very much. It's just going to go blank a little bit where we start off. So, early help. Connect 2, which is kind of the rebranding of early help. Just to give a bit of a background, really, what's actually happened is some of you might be kind of aware of FIP and other organisations or teams like that that were sitting within children's social care that have recently been disbanded. And there's kind of been a bit of a restructure. So elements of those teams have gone over to other teams, and early help, which was previously known as EHAST, has now changed its name to Connect 2, and we're offering a kind of a network of people around schools. So as it sits at the moment, what we're offering, where we're sitting is you have your universal services, then you have early help, and then you have children's social care. So the hope is our role will be that we will stop families and young people getting to the stage where they are needing to kind of enter into the children's social care domain. So initially, we'd like every family and young person to be working alongside the universal kind of services like your family hubs that are emerging at the moment, the nurseries and all those kind of levels. And then if there's more targeted work that's required, this is where we enter in. And if obviously under the guise of safeguarding, etc., that's when social care get in. But the notion is that hopefully it will stop at our level, and that families and young people can remain kind of in within the universal services, or kind of occasionally kind of flipping in between us if they need that extra support. So it is identifying those themes within families and young people that need work to be undertaken, and that's where our role kind of mainly is. The other aspect of it, in terms of looking at what early help is that families, as you're probably fully aware, are kind of getting very tired of having to go over and over and over the same story of their kind of trauma, their life history, etc., over and over again. So if we can do a kind of simultaneous kind of ongoing help for families, that means they're not going over their stories over and over again, that they have accessibility to lots of agencies, and that they can work alongside them probably for the duration of what their need is, then that's our ultimate aim, and that's what we're trying to do with universal services as well. So what we're looking at is breaking up the early help into 3 localities. And you might well, at this present time, be aware that John Jury, who covers the southeast, Laura Shepherd, who covers the north, and myself are coming out round schools, introducing ourselves and saying, these are your named workers. So we have a team at the moment of the practice managers who are, as I just said, myself, John and Laura. Then you have a set of youth workers within our teams and family support workers, and then support workers. And each school will get a named professional that will be linked to your school, that can be a point of reference, so you can ring them up and speak to them if you need to about maybe a safeguarding concern. It might be about a family that you have concerns about. It might be the fact you ring up and say, actually, we've got a problem in this school with vaping and we need some help around that. But the notion is that you have a person that you can speak to on a regular basis and access on a regular basis for advice, for support, and also to kind of talk about themes that are perhaps presenting in your area or within your school, that we can look at, put an extra resource in to support you with managing and kind of supporting with. So as I just said, there is the kind of direct schoolwork. There's also the direct family support work. So alongside the schoolwork, we will also be having our workers with caseload, and that caseload will be working with families that are willing to work with us, and that's our fingers crossed. Hopefully they will do that. Alongside kind of looking at their parenting and looking at, perhaps it might even be debt, it might even be just helping getting routines around getting that young person up in the morning. It could be a wide variety of different things, but that direct family support work will be undertaken, first of all, with an assessment with that family. We'll identify the need, and then we'll look at a plan of how we address that need over a period of time. There'll also be program support, and that program support is about that parenting not classes, but I don't want to use that word, I do apologise, but parenting programs, which we can offer, and I'll come on to that a little bit more. We also have the early help and send an advice line, which you might be already aware of. Gateway has closed. We have MASH, which remains open for all your immediate safeguarding concerns, which are for those urgent, we need kind of support and help now. And then you have the help and send advice line for those kind of points where you might want to kind of just book a 15-minute slot and have a conversation with somebody about maybe something that you're concerned about. However, what we are also saying is you do have a direct link now, and as I said, those schools that we haven't been around will be, we will be getting around those schools, of an individual that you can ring up and also get advice from. So it might, you speak to them first rather than go through the help and send line. Or it might be you do the help and send line and you get referred back to that worker, and that worker will then ring you and say, how can we support you with this? We also have the family group conflict mediation, which again is something that you can access, and we can kind of work with you to kind of access that for families as well. So currently at the moment, as I said, the advice line, you can book a slot. You can get that. You can access that through the plymouth.gov.uk advice and send line, and you can book your slot on that, and a worker will ring you back, and you can have that conversation. There will be changes on that line fairly soon, because the idea at the moment is that when you are ringing up and you're asking for advice, depending on the age group, we might be able to kind of put you through to somebody that might be able to deal with that within the community, but that is in development at the moment. But as it sits principally at the moment, you will be getting through to somebody from the early help team that will kind of speak through whatever issues that you might be presenting. We'll be offering advice on that. So I've spoken about the schools a little bit. You will get the connect to worker, the family worker or the youth worker connected to your school. We will be offering kind of in-house training, perhaps potentially around therapeutic parenting and all that kind of stuff, or therapeutic teaching, that kind of stuff. We can offer that. We are in talks at the moment about organising and doing that. And we are looking at offering parenting programmes in schools for schools to be offering that to the parents of that school. We are looking at doing a calendar next year, September time, of schools that are willing to be able to, or have got the facilities to be able to host that type of parenting program, and we will be putting that out to schools. And hopefully within the conversations that you're having with Laura, John and myself, that conversation of actually can you host one of those programs is kind of occurring. And if you're saying yes to that, then we're feeding that back to Kelly Kerr, who's our program coordinator, and she'll be contacting you and saying, actually, we could be running a therapeutic children's session from here. We could be looking at Take 3. We could be offering a variety of other programs. We also offer support around EHAT. So hopefully, if you do have issues with EHATs, you could ring up your linked worker and say, can you just come in and just kind of work alongside us with this EHAT? And also moving on, hopefully September, and we're waiting for kind of further guidance on this, we will have a particular focus on attendance. But again, that is very much in its infancy, so we're looking to find out a little bit more about what that's going to look like. We do have youth workers and families, as I said, that work within our team. Youth workers primarily work with sort of 11 up to about 17, 18. When you do have a family support worker working with a family, they have the ability to refer into youth workers. And youth workers normally offer one-to-one work with the said youngster. We also have support workers, and our support workers can go to that lower range, from about 6 up to about 11, and offer one-to-one work with young people, and they can do that within the school and they can do that within the home. So the notion there is we cover all those ages, and they can have one-to-one work, whether that's a support worker or whether that's a youth worker. What we're trying to do where possible is do a referral into the family support worker first, who will assess the need in the family to make sure there's no other areas of need, because what we have found is when a youth worker is required for a particular young person or a support worker, there's sometimes issues within the family that also need to be addressed. So if the family support worker goes out and does that initial kind of assessment, we can make sure there's no other areas that we're missing, and that we can do as a preventative measure that we can work alongside that family to address. So it might be around parenting, it might be around other bits and pieces that the family support worker can pick up, do a short piece of work with, whilst the youth worker also goes in. So obviously direct work kind of does typically last about 12 weeks, but when I say that, it's based on the family's needs, and so we do have families that we have worked with longer. We try to work on a strength-based and restorative approaches. So if a family turns and goes, we're feeling kind of that there isn't any work needed around there, and we kind of perhaps feel that there might be, we try where we can to angle that piece of work into the family as much as we possibly can. But it is based on a voluntary kind of agreement where that young person or that family are willing to work with us, but we do, where possible, try to offer as much as we can to address the needs of that family. In terms of programs, so you're probably aware at the moment that Lark, Barnardo's, Action for Children are running a variety of programs around Plymouth. We are trying to coordinate that at the moment. So things like Incredible Years, Solihull, Take 3, DART, I don't know if some of you are aware of that. That's the American-based program that Barnardo's is currently running, which is about from 7 to 14 aggression towards parents. Is up and running, and we're trying to look at kind of citywide what programs are being run, where they're being run, and where the need is most. So we're not having, say, 5 solihull's running up and down the whole of Plymouth at the moment and actually nobody really attending them. We're trying to be really kind of coordinated in our approach about that, and that's going to take some time to do. In addition to that, we're also looking at Solihull in terms of what other aspects can be attached onto Solihull. So there is a Solihull Send programme that is being considered and discussed at the moment about whether we can start running that. There also is a Solihull parenting programme that has been run, where English is not the first language for the parents. So to look at those kind of ethnic minorities or anybody else that doesn't have English as their first program, and that has been met with quite a lot of success. So we're hoping to kind of be able to roll that out as well. In terms of youth groups, we should be able to offer a variety of youth groups. So me and my friends offer kind of more specialised youth groups for those in young people that have kind of on the autistic spectrum or ADHD, as well as kind of youth groups within the area where these younger people are living. So the notion is that with your link worker, you should be able to say, actually, I've got a young person, we need to get them into a youth group. They're kind of out in the streets, most of the time, if they're not at school or they're not attending school. How do we get this person in? And it might be that we start with youth groups, it might that we start with one-to-one youth work, but that is the notion of what we can offer, and we're building on that as we speak. There's also Within My Reach, which is a reducing parental conflict. So that looks at primarily what healthy relationships are between parents, and we're offering that also to be run within schools. And as I said, the therapeutic parenting workshops. Now there's 3 of those. Let's talk about children, let's talk about adolescents, and let's talk about healthy relationships. If within your school you do have a specific need, whether that is around online safety, if that's around vaping, if that is around whatever domains it might be kind of coming up, then please speak to your link worker, because we are trying to sit alongside our partners and go, actually, we need to see people like Sharp going into the primary schools to talk about vaping. I don't know if people are aware that there's a growing kind of concern about THC, which is the hallucinating aspect of cannabis that is now being used in vapes. So young people are able to take out the liquid of the vape and put this new liquid in, and that is presenting mainly in the secondary schools at the moment, but we are concerned at the growing kind of levels of usage of that, and it is a developing picture, and we're kind of behind, should we say, whatever it is at the moment on that, and we're trying to work or speak to Sharp about kind of working with them in conjunction to kind of educate young people, but also schools about that. So family group conferencing, you're probably quite aware of what family group conferencing is, but it facilitates the kind of existing networks and resources to create a safety plan. So we're expecting families to kind of work with the family group conference workers to look at what is kind of the issues within that family and to create safety plans and to look at that family taking on responsibility of how they're going to manage that situation. That gets reviewed and, you know, kind of looked at to see if that's working. If it's not, then it will kind of be adjusted, hopefully to make that work, and you can refer into that. We also provide mediation between kind of young person and parent or family members, mums and dads who are particularly split up, to look at improving communication, also looking at how perhaps arrangements can be made over the care of that child, etc., rather than take it down a legal route. That has been met with a lot of success. So I would recommend anybody, if they wish to kind of look at that, again, you can link in with your family worker or your youth worker, you know, designated worker, to kind of discuss that, or you can make a referral in to the organisation about that. And then I guess finally, this is just the kind of information in terms of booking a slot on the Send Advice line. You can do that through the kind of plymouth.gov.co.uk website. If you have any concerns or referrals that you want to do, you can send that into the EHAST at plymouth.gov.uk. And we are looking at doing EHAT training coming up fairly soon. John leads on that at the moment, but John, Laura and I, who are fairly new to this domain, will also be part of that training so that we can go out into our localities and offer that training guidance on it as well. But he is putting dates in the calendar hopefully fairly soon so we can do a citywide training plan on that as well. So that's it. I've spoken quite quickly through that. I've probably made up time for you all. So I'm just hoping that's given you a kind of an overview, and that is okay. So if anybody wants to ask any questions, please do.
Any questions? I think something popped up in the chat. Let me just have a look. There's one question. Is the portal for EHAT no longer used? I can probably answer that, but you're probably best
No, the
placed.
portal for EHAT should be used.
Yeah, it's still there.
So it's up and running still.
That's it for the chat. Any other questions?
Was that okay? Does anybody need any information on anything else that they're feeling that they're not getting it at the moment?
No, any questions around early help, EHATs in general?
My last question, I guess, is are people aware that the family hubs are being launched, or some of them were launched in June the 6th? Is that a no?
No, we're very quiet.
Okay.
They're normally a
That's
bit more
fine.
vocal
Okay.
than this.
Sorry, is this family hubs within the children's centres you're talking about?
No, I'm just talking about the family hubs. There's 4 family hubs that were launched around Plymouth on the 6th of June.
But they are not linked to the children's centres, or are they situated in the children's centres?
Some of them are, yes, quite
Okay.
right. Some of them are. So
Yeah,
like
and that's what I
the
wanted
barn
to
at
make.
Barnbarton.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. What about Barnardos on Blandford Road? Is that one as well?
I believe so. So what I can do is send out information on them and what the family hub direction is, so that people are aware of it. And if you do have families or any other kind of ability to signpost, we will kind of send that information through as well. All right.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
Great. That would be really useful. Thank you so much, Naomi. That was really helpful.
All right.
Lots
Take
of
care,
information
people.
there. Brilliant. Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Brilliant, that's great. Hopefully that was really useful for you all, especially around things like EHATs as well. And it's good to know that there will be some more training launched, especially if some new SENCOs are in the room today. That might be useful for you, especially to break down perhaps that communication around TAMS and EHATs that, you know, is always floating around. So that could be useful for some of you. Brilliant. Okay, so still 10 minutes behind, but that's okay. We will make up time with that. Next, we have Jim. Hopefully, Jim is with us now.
Morning, colleagues.
Brilliant. Thanks,
Always
Jim.
a
Good
nervous
morning.
moment, Lisa.
Is he here? Is he here? I know I gave Jenny the task of calling you in. So well done, Jenny. Did a good job there. Thank you, Jim. Thanks for joining us this morning. And I know that you're covering two things today. A gender item for Beth and or attendance as well. So
yes, that's right.
Yes,
so
brilliant.
hopefully I'll catch you up in time, because what I need to do isn't long, but I
That's
just need to
okay.
share with you the presentation that was given around Ofsted complaints at the DSL briefing, and also the data around part-time timetables, which was given at the recent attendance network. Now, I appreciate there might be a bit of crossover, because some of you may have attended those meetings as part of your role. However, what I don't want to happen is that information gets missed, because there is not because people don't attend all of those networks. So the SENCO network is sort of closing the loop, really. So I'd rather say it twice or three times than have people miss it. Right, I will just, and of course this is the send lens as well, so there is a slight difference there. Lisa, can everyone see my presentation?
Yes, they can.
Okay, you may or may not be aware, but families are able to complain directly to Ofsted, and you'll probably remember during COVID, the then Education Secretary recommended the parents did this. And maybe as a result, maybe as other factors, we have seen a significant increase in the complaints that we receive, which are from parents directly into Ofsted, and those complaints are then sent to us for assurance. We receive the complaint, we talk to the head teacher, and then we need really a summary of what's going on, and then we send a summary of that back to Ofsted. And often the DFE or the ESFA can also ask us. And in follow-up, so I've had this week, an inspector can make a call and ask us to talk through what we did, and they will then subsequently call the head teacher of the school. Not always, but it's not unusual. So that probably covers that slide, apart from the last point, which obviously when when a school is inspected, the complaints are on file. So that is another thing to bear in mind. Okay, so the categories of complaint that come in, some are directed to children's social care, some are directed to the LADO, where there's an allegation against a teacher. And the final category is the ones that come to us in education participation and skills. So that is where there's an aspect of safeguarding. And as you can imagine, most complaints involve some aspect of safeguarding in the broader sense, hence the majority of the complaints come into us. So I've covered what some of this in terms of what we do, talk to the head teacher. They will pull together what has happened. We will then write a note of visit, and then we will provide the summary along to Ofsted, and the note of visit will come into the school. So in terms of terms 1 to 5, just to give you an idea of the scale, we've had 29 complaints relating to the primary phase, 22 relating to the secondary phase, and 2 relating to the special. Obviously, there are more primaries than secondaries, but there are more pupils in secondaries than primaries. So we've had 53 altogether. So that is a rise for us year on year. And there are particular hotspots, and those hotspots, you won't be surprised to hear, are towards the end of terms. Towards the end of the autumn term, again towards the end of each of those terms, when I think that obviously young people get tired in schools, so those are key times for us. So I think probably what one of the key messages for today is, what are those themes for you to think about as a SENCO? There is communication in every complaint, and of course I appreciate that the families who often complain, communication can be really difficult, and quite often we find that the complaints are from families where there is misunderstanding around what's been said and what actions will be taken, and we rarely find actually that anything is untowards or not happening. It tends to all be about communication, but within that broader umbrella of communication, we often see incidents relating to perceived lack of supervision from staff, capacity to meet SEND needs, so my child's needs aren't being met, and quite often that can be around in exclusions, suspensions, part-time timetables. We have complaints about staffing. A lot, particularly at the secondary phase, can relate to social media and things happening outside of school. We do hear complaints around site security and the behaviour of pupils other than the complainant's child. So quite often we will hear my child has experienced a sanction, other children have not, and what they do is comparable to what my child has done. So that sense of injustice around things. So in terms of the key themes for secondary schools, oh, sorry, I think I've got that. That was the key themes for primary. Key themes for secondary: bullying, peer-to-peer, particularly physical assault. And again, there is the mix of social media in here around inappropriate behaviours, sexual behaviours. Again, communication, particularly in secondary, around not taking action. Again, staffing and capacity to meet said needs. So there are similarities, but there are a few differences, subtle differences. I think the key messages for today are: consider your wider curriculum, particularly around the PSHE, RSHE curriculum in around safer internet use. How are you working with families to promote those messages and allow them to understand what you're saying to the children at the school? And those key themes, particularly around secondary, around male role models and violence against women. Consider your behaviour and anti-bullying policies. When's the last time they were reviewed? And what informs that review, and how are you identifying best practice? It's always worth considering how you communicate with families when something happens, particularly the speed at which it happens and the form in which it happens. So, for example, leaving messages can often lead to complaint and confusion. And the final one, I think, which is helpful for SENCOs and school leaders, is that idea around, I'm not sure that all parents understand how to complain, and also just thinking about the perception of the complainant in terms of trying to support families informally before it escalates. And I know all of those things are really, really difficult, and quite often it can be a real challenge to work constructively with families, although I know colleagues, of course, work really hard to do that. But those are things worth considering. And I'll just stop there and stop sharing just to see if there's any questions. I know we're a bit tight for time, but is there anything which is shouting out at anyone, or is everyone happy with that? And we'll provide these updates regularly. Okay. I can't see any questions, or by all means pop them in the chat. All right, bear with me as I just share again. Right, Lisa, I just need a confirmation here. Am I sharing or am I not?
No sharing at the moment.
No sharing at the moment. Okay, let's see if I can make this work again. Am I now sharing again?
Yes, that's looking better.
Fantastic.
Yes, you're sharing.
Yep, everyone see that?
Yes.
Great. I just as well want to quickly run through a couple of slides at the Early Help and Attendance Network. And I'm going to move through these quickly and move straight on to part-time timetables, where we've done quite a lot of analysis in the city, and it's quite an area of concern for us. And I think we need to do some quite significant work with schools and partners in terms of identifying the key needs of students who are likely to be subject to a reduced timetable. And it was really good to hear the early help messages that were happening before, because my feeling is when I talk to schools that for many pupils a reduced timetable can be a really effective strategy, whereby you can support a young person into full-time education as quickly as possible where there may be barriers. But for other young people, I think that there are gaps in support which often lead to a part-time timetable being implemented as a strategy in lieu of other strategies. And I think as we move through the autumn term and the rest of the summer term, we will be seeking feedback around what it is that schools need and the patterns that they're seeing. So I'm not going to go through all of these headlines here. They'll come back to you as part of the slide pack. But what we particularly see is an increase in part-time timetables, on entry to primary, reception in year 1, and then again at Key Stage 4. Interestingly, we don't see it across the primary to secondary transition. What we see is a drop in attendance in year 7 and a drop in attendance in year 6. So there's something in that we need to explore with you to understand the nuances of what's happening. Just in terms of a bit more detail around part-time timetables at the primary phase, we find, well, you can see there that the most significant categories when we're receiving the reporting is for special educational needs and behaviour. So that's quite interesting. If the majority of primary age children are in reception in year 1, if we see quite a concentration there, what is it that we need to do with our early years practitioners to support the transition and to make sure that we target the right training and development so we can really start to tackle some of the issues? And again, in the secondary phase, it's a slightly different picture where we see medical needs and reintegration now as key areas, and we need to really unpick what that means. And the interrelation with special educational needs and the interrelation with the different systems in secondary schools in terms of what are SENCOs doing, what are other leads in the school doing, and where are those pupils falling in the system, and what additional support and development do we need? So there's the patterns we've got there. Any questions about part-time timetables? Is there anything in the chat?
Don't think there is.
Okay, well, that's what I was hoping, because I think they're fairly straightforward messages, and in both instances, particularly the second, we're looking to work with you to address, understand, and resolve the issues. That just leaves me to thank you in advance for anyone who will be involved in the local area SEND inspection. We are just coming towards the end of the second week. The first week was auditing, so it was the 6 children and young people where the inspectors considered a detailed study of what has happened to them and their experiences, and inspectors are speaking to families at the moment. We have been preparing various documents and reports within the week, and then next week it's when inspectors are on site. And then there'll be a number of meetings with schools and school leads, and that information is coming out today as the timetable firms up. But thanks for all of you who have been involved in the inspection so far in any way. It is really appreciated, particularly around the 6 young people where the schools involved were absolutely brilliant. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jim.
Right, if there's nothing else for me, I will leave and carry on with my day. Thanks for all the hard work you do with families and children.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. Okay, right, so we have made up, let me have a look, about 5 minutes, I think. Jim's made up some time for us there. Right, we will keep going with our agenda then, if there are no questions at the moment. So next up we have Chelsea. I won't bring up the PowerPoint and then bring it back down again, because I think you all want to see Chelsea's face. So I'd like to introduce Chelsea Sleep to you. And Chelsea is our new team manager for the statutory team, and she wanted to come along today just for 5 minutes, 5 minutes or so, just for a few minutes, just to really say hello, so that you can put a face to a name, really, because we do appreciate there has been a gap in that service for a while with regards to a team manager. So I'd just like to introduce you to Chelsea, and I'm sure she is going to come back for the next SENCO briefing in the autumn term, and have a longer chat with you, perhaps around some of the issues that you might have, some questions that you might have for her. But for today, it really is just a hello. So I'm going to hand you over to Chelsea now.
Thank you, Lisa. Hi, everyone. Yes, it's very much, I just wanted to touch base with you all, introduce myself. So I am a previous secondary SENCO myself, so I'm very aware of the challenges and the daily daily challenges that we all have within education, but hopefully working together, I hope to visit each of the schools, work with all of you as SENCOs to try and build that communication for our young people. I'm really passionate about supporting them and supporting you. As Lisa said, there's been a bit of a gap for some time, so hopefully we can really build that positive relationship for our young people. I am an engineering teacher and an art teacher, so if anybody wants to pick my brains about that, obviously I'm happy to share with you. But I just really look forward to working with you all and seeing how we can support our young people and families.
Brilliant. That's really great. Thank you, Chelsea, for coming along today. I know at the moment we're all really busy with the SEND inspection, so Chelsea is going to come back. And what we'll do is we'll have a longer slot in the autumn term briefing, and we'll perhaps prepare that session in advance so that you can put some questions in advance to Chelsea so that we can, have a proper prepared session for you. But thank you so much, Chelsea, for your time today. And thank you for being here as well,
Okay.
just
Nice
to
to be
join
here.
in with the session. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Okay.
One thing, sorry, Lisa, just
No,
as you
that's
said,
okay.
it'd be really good for us to continue to work together. I've noticed a lot of things that need to be developed within the department. So I will hopefully have a regular slot on these SENCO briefings so that I can work with you all as a team.
Brilliant. That would be really helpful. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Right. Okay. Let me just have a look. What I'm going to do, because I think it's the charter next, I'm going to bring the PowerPoint back up. Hopefully you can see that one. This should be where we were last at. So I just need to whiz forward a little bit. And all of that. Okay.
Lisa.
Brilliant, thank you. So next on the agenda, I just wanted to really give you an update on where we are around the inclusion charter and commitment. Just a few minutes. I've got 10 minutes for this, but I don't really think we need 10 minutes. So yeah, we're catching up now and we're clawing back time. So well done, first of all, to all of those schools that have signed up so far. What's coming into us, the quality is absolutely fantastic. What the kind of purpose of this really is not for you to be spending hours and hours on the documentation. It's about you sharing your practice of things that you've already done in the schools, and it's about you working together as a team to celebrate that wider inclusion. But what you are putting in is absolutely fantastic. Your evidence is really good. So congratulations to those schools. You've got your logo and your name is on the local offer and so on. Just around kind of where we are with schools signing up. So we're looking at about a third of schools now have either signed up or they've committed to signing up either this term or in term one. So that's kind of where we are with numbers around schools that have signed up. Don't forget, there's no pressure our end around. You might say, I want to do term one, and then you start in term one and you haven't quite finished and it rolls over into term two. That's absolutely fine. You might decide, actually, I want to sign up for term four next year. You can do that. That's absolutely fine. There's no pressure from our end. You just need to contact us and say, I'd like to do it at this point in the year. Once you've perhaps had a conversation with your head teacher, or you might be in a trust and you want to talk to other schools in your trust, you might want to all do it together at a certain point. So what I wanted to do really was just remind you about how to sign up, because most of the questions that I have are around how to sign up or how to submit. So if you want to go about signing up, there's 3 contacts there. There's myself, there's Jenny, who's here today, and there's also Claire. I'm not sure if Claire's here today. She's probably really busy with the SEND inspection, but she might be here in the background. Claire,
I'm here.
Oh, she's here. Wonderful, brilliant. Oh, well done. So Claire also leads jointly with us on the inclusion charter as well. So you can email any of us or all 3 of us, because what happens is when you submit, we meet together and it's almost like moderation really. We'll have a look at it between the 3 of us. So if you email all 3 of us, that's even more helpful. So to sign up, you contact any one of us, and then to submit, what you probably do is you'll probably find the person that you originally contacted, you would then send it to, but you can send it to all 3 of us. And then what happens is you have a term to complete it, but like I said, if it rolls over into another term, that's absolutely fine. Don't panic. We then have a term to have a look at it. What you'll probably find is it doesn't take us a whole term to look at it. We normally try and book it in as quickly as we can, but we would have a slot. We would take, you know, an hour or two to take a look at it. What we try and do is perhaps have a look, book in a time with a couple of others and look at them together. And then we contact you afterwards to say, yes, fantastic. And then we email you over the logo, or we tend to call you and chat through. So that's how it works. I've popped the link on there so you can have a look at the paperwork. We have updated the paperwork very recently. So if you've downloaded the old version, thinking, oh, you know, I'm just going to pop it, you know, on my desktop or something to have a look at later, please go back in and have a look, because we've streamlined it a bit more now. So it does look a bit more straightforward to complete now. So make sure you are using the current version. What I tend to do is, if you do email me and ask me all about it, I will attach the latest version anyway for you to have a look at. So do always have a look at the latest version. Anything you wanted to add, Claire, seeing you're here today? Is there anything extra?
It's just that in the last section where we're looking at evidence, we are getting some amazing things that the schools are doing, but what we really want to know is the so what. What impact is that thing that you're doing having on the families of your school? So that's you know, a couple of sentences is all it needs, but it's the so what element of all the brilliant stuff that you're doing. Why are you doing it, and what impact is it having on your families? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. And the document does sort of specify it quite clearly for you. We've separated the boxes, so you've got a section for evidence and a section for impact. So it's quite clear there. But if you are stuck, you can complete one section, send it over. We can have a look at it. We are here to support you with it. So don't feel like you're kind of, you know, feeling your way in the dark or anything like that. We are here to help you. Brilliant. Are there any questions? I can't see you currently. Any hands up or any questions?
No questions.
No. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We will keep going. Okay, I think actually it's you next, Jenny, isn't it? I know I've popped the two frameworks on there, but I think you're going to actually talk about the GATI, aren't you? So I won't talk about those two frameworks because I think you're covering it.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yes, right. I'm going to hand over to Jenny now. What just before Jenny starts, what we've got for the next sort of 15 minutes is we do have some updates. So Jenny's got some updates just around primary and early years. They will take about 10 minutes. So secondary colleagues, if you do want to pop out and grab a quick cuppa, you can, because these messages are for early years for 10 minutes. But do come back, because we do have some messages around transition into adulthood afterwards, so please don't leave. That's the only thing I did want to quickly say. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you, Lisa. So I'm Jenny Hutton. I'm one of the Early Years Improvement Officers, and we thought it would be useful today just to go through some updates around early years specifically. So apologies if this isn't relevant to you, but hopefully you can just take a few minutes breather. So it was a reminder really that the Graduated Approach to Inclusion document, the GATI as we call it, there are two versions. So for those of you who are in primary school settings, you will be using both of those frameworks. And particularly if your school has a nursery attached, it will be even more important that you have that framework to use as well. So I've put two links on the slides there, and I know these slides will go out to you. So the top one will take you to the document. So if you haven't seen the early years version of the Graduated Approach to Inclusion for Plymouth, then that will take you there. And the second link that you'll see in front of you is for the recordings of our early years SENCO briefings, which happen on a termly basis. So I know for some of you, you need to attend both this one and the early years one, and that's not always easy. So we do record them so that you can access them. But the one that I've put on that slide on the 24th of May last year was all around the early years graduated approach to inclusion. So I was thinking I might have to rush through today, and it's only a few slides that I'm going to share with you. But if you want to know more, please do go back to that video recording, because we take you through each section very thoroughly.
and it will probably save some of you a little bit of time in reading the whole document through, and you'll be much more aware about how to use it. So they both run under the same principles, they're both meant to work in the same way, but the actual function when you're using them might be slightly different. So they do look quite different in many ways, but with the same purpose. So the early years graduated approach to inclusion is being revised, but the one that you still need to access is online. But just be aware that at some point there will hopefully be an update with those. It has been updated a tiny bit from when it was launched in 2020 already, because we had our reformed EYFS in 2021, I think it was. So there have been some revisions already. So that document is split into 3 sections. The first section is all around following a graduated approach, so it gives you real context for it. Section 2 is about universal inclusive practice, and section 3 is around universal targeted and specialist in amongst those 4 broad areas of needs. And I'll just whisk through those now and sort of give you a bit more detail about each of those sections. So section 1 is quite a wordy part of the document. So again, if you go back to that earlier SENCO briefing, you will hear me summarising it, which is sometimes a little bit easier when you're stretched for time. So section 1 outlines the purpose of the document, which will be exactly the same as the school version. So it's part of our local offer. It's there to support us to meet those statutory requirements, to ensure consistency of practice so that staff are identifying, assessing and recording the needs of children requiring additional or special educational provision. And it's there as a single point of reference for professionals and for families to support that communication and planning. So that's really to help that one above, the consistency of practice. And it's to guide all parties through meeting a child's need. Thank you, Lisa. Section 2 is a really useful section to look at your universal provision. So this section is looking at all the things that should be in place to ensure that high quality teaching is there in the early years. So this section is what is really expected. So this isn't about children who've got SEND. This is about what you're doing for all children. So it's a really brilliant audit tool or checklist that you can look at as a team and look at the things that you think you're doing really well, and perhaps there may be some things that you still need to develop. So it's really, really useful. Okay, next slide. Thank you, Lisa. So that section 2, as I said, it's like an audit. So you'll see lots of tables like the one that's on the slide there. And it's split into 10 headings. This will be on the next slide. We can't go into any detail on these at the minute, but just to give you the heads up on what they are. So there's a section on whole setting inclusion, the role of the SENCO, supporting and developing staff, working with other agencies and services, partnership with parents, the role of the adult, induction and transition, learning environments, routines and rhythms of the day, and observation, assessment and planning. So that helps that it's broken down into those sections, because you can either take it as a whole and look at it all in one go, or you can take a section at a time to work through with your staff. So section 3, this is the section that you go to, firstly to check that you're putting all those universal strategies into place. But when you feel a child needs more support, so they might need more targeted or specialist support. So this section is broken down into those 4 broad areas of need under universal, and there's a whole bank of strategies, and then into specialist and targeted and then specialist. So in amongst that, there are lists of links and websites which should be really useful to you as well. So there's lots of things that sort of you get signposted off to. So it's a really, really good resource to be using, thinking about our early years children specifically. So it's there to offer that differentiated provision. and it's designed again as part of an audit tool for practice. So you can look at the section, for example, on communication and interaction, and you can think, are we putting all those universal things in place? Are we doing all those? Brilliant. Yes, we're doing all those. Right, I've got a particular child in mind, and actually I need to go to that targeted section now to see what else we need to put in place for that child. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Thank you, Lisa. So there's just an example really of what you might see when you're looking at section 3. So I know you can't read that little diagram that's in there, but it's just giving you a flavour of how it looks. It's all sort of laid out in grids, and you have subheadings of the EYFS within that as well. And those are being amended at the moment because of revisions, but it's broken down as areas of learning as well. So you'll see there that there are some strategies that I've just pulled out. So these are just a few examples of the types of things that you'll find in there. So it's worded as questions at the moment. So under universal provision, are adults down at the child's level? Are visual cues, gestures and concrete objects used to support children's understanding? And then under targeted, there'll be some suggestions of other things that you'll need to think about. So simple, short listening and attention games, one-to-one with their key person, developing into working with 2 other children, and possibly the use of now and next boards. And then the next level, the specialist provision bank, looks at things like the individual listening and attention programs that children might be engaged in, and language programs that use symbols, signs and speech to enable people to communicate. So it goes through each area of learning with that. If you've got any question, please feel free to put them in the chat and I will answer them in a moment. So that's talking about the early years GATI. So please do make sure you've got that for your early years children. So it's going right the way up to age 5, right the way up through reception. So please make sure that within your school nursery and reception class that you've got use of that. So the next thing that I just wanted to raise as an update is around the SEN Inclusion Fund and also Disability Access Fund. So these are 2 types of funding that you can access for children who have additional needs. So we have SEN Inclusion Funding. This, I must stress, is not for reception children. So this is only relevant to those of you who have nurseries where children are receiving their early education funding and are aged 2, 3 and 4 years old. So unfortunately it's not for reception because that sort of runs through your other school systems. So this is just purely for those in receipt of that EEF funding. The panel meets 6 times a year. There is guidance on this on the pod. If you ever can't find it, please do let me know and I'll make sure that I signpost you to it. We do regularly put updates on this in the early years bulletin that gets sent to schools. So if you don't get sight of that, you might want to just speak to the office and make sure that you do see that, because very often we will be updating on changes within that funding panel within that forum. So keep your eyes peeled. There are a few changes happening at the moment, just to say as well, because we are looking at revising some of the processes and systems. So that early years bulletin is vital that you do see that, you do keep abreast of what's happening. One recent change that we have just started is that children who are going to be with you in September, for example, and who already have the funding will receive a continuation of funding by you completing a new annual review form, which again has been out with the bulletin. We have talked about the continuation of funding and matters around the SEN inclusion at the early years SENCO briefing, which was on Tuesday, and that's going to be posted on the pod shortly too. And the link should be in the bulletin this week or next week, just for reference. So on top of the SEN Inclusion Fund, we also have DAF funding, which is accessible for 3 and 4 year olds who are in receipt of DLA. So this is about providers within nurseries. If you have children who are eligible for DLA, you need to verify their entitlement by obtaining a photocopy of the DLA letter that's sent to parents. And then you can email in to schoolsfinance@plymouth.gov.uk with that information around that child. So name, date of birth and address. And that is entitling you as a setting, if you take 3 and 4 year olds and they're entitled to DLA, to a one-off payment within that year of £828 as a one-off payment. And that's just recently increased in April.
Okay, I think that's my updates. Thank you, Lisa. I don't know whether anyone's got any questions.
Thank you, Jenny. Any questions at all, Jenny? No. Brilliant. Okay, lovely. Thank you, Jenny. So it's just me now, just for a couple of messages. And this one really is just some thoughts that I've been having around best practice sharing. So this is for everybody now. It's not just messages for primary colleagues. And this is around conversations that I've been having with all of you really through our audit approach this year, through individual conversations, with trusts. And so many of you share so many different things with me. It's thinking about how we go about sharing some of that. Some of you might not want to share any of your best practice. That's absolutely fine. But there's lots of good stuff out there that maybe we could share. So if you're happy to share anything, and that could be anything at all, from resources to approaches, to research, which I'll go on to talk about in just a second. It's thinking about, if you're happy, what are the platforms really, I suppose, for sharing that best practice. So at one point, we were really good at putting lots of stuff on the SENCO guide. That's gone a bit quiet. For example, some of you were really happy to share your SEN information reports. So we've got some really good examples of that, and how you work with families, for example, on your co-production around SEN information reports, because quite often I get asked that, you know, how do you get families engaged with that, for example. There might be some really good work that you do with your governors, for example, that you might want to share, governors reports, things like that. It could be approaches to provision in your school, resources that you found, links to really good websites, anything at all that could, you know, easily go up onto the SENCO guide. And also I was thinking about our research, because lots of you have completed the National Award in the last 2 or 3 years, and there's so much good research out there that you've done. And it was recently that we put together the conference with the Plymouth University, and I think lots of you attended that. And it was Devon that was sharing all of their research. So I think some of you went off into their little rooms, and they, you know, they shared their research and their approaches, and it's all action-based research. So it was all, you know, linked to their school and how they can improve their school practice through their research. And it's all very small scale action research. So I was thinking, gosh, you know, our Plymouth SENCOs have got all of their action research as well. So would they like to share their research, how it's improved their practice in their school? And if they do want to share it, how could we best do that? Would a slot at a briefing be, you know, a good approach? Would perhaps for primary and secondary networks be a good approach? So it's not something that you need to perhaps answer now. You might want to go away and reflect upon that, but pop it on the evaluation. There's a question on there today on the evaluation. Have a think, because by sharing this, we can all help each other. So we've got some really, really good research and resources that perhaps we really would like to share. I know sometimes some of you email me and say, can you send this out to other SENCOs? You know, that's fine. We can do that as well. So just perhaps pop it on the evaluation, because I think, you know, we've got some fantastic research out there that we might want to, you know, bounce off each other and share as well. So it was really just to do that. Also on the evaluation, I think I might have it on the next slide. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Yes, it's on this one. A couple more messages here. Unfortunately, I have had to cancel the primary network. It does fall on the same day as the national teachers' strikes. It is out of our hands, unfortunately, so we will need to cancel that one. So I will set a date quite early in the autumn term. We did have a speaker that was coming down to talk about research, actually, and a SEMH resource that she's put together as a result of that. That's available to primary SENCOs. So she was travelling about 200 miles, I think. So I do need to set a date quite soon with her, because she's very keen to come back. So I will let you know as soon as we set a new date for that one. Also to remind you that we do have the transition evaluation working party. This is to have a look at that evaluation form so that we can use it with families about 6 weeks after your evaluation in the autumn term. We only have a small number of willing volunteers for that one. So if you do want to come along, it's not too late. It's on the 12th of July. It's a virtual session in the afternoon. So if you do want to sign up to be part of that, please do let me know. The more the merrier. area, so please do come along. And we're also looking for volunteers for case studies. So if you feel that you've got a really good case study that you'd like to share as part of your transition this year, please do get in touch, because we also would like to collect a really good bank of case studies from your transition as well. They don't have to be long, but that would be really useful as well. So that's all on the evaluation. So it's just simple yes, no. I have had a look at the evaluation. It says 4 minutes to complete. So if you could complete that, that would be fantastic. And lots of you did in the spring. So thank you so much. And there will be a census codes working party in the autumn term as well, because I'm conscious that the census codes documents, they're the guidance to help you, is a bit out of date now. We did that one about 3 years ago, so we'll have a look at that one in the autumn term as well. Any questions on any of that information that I've just rattled on to you about? Any of those updates and reminders? Can't see you, but no? Okay, no? All right, we're doing well. We're only a couple of minutes behind, doing really well this morning. Okay, right, so what I'm going to do, we are just about to hand over very shortly to a couple of colleagues, and the session will be based for secondaries. So at this point in the morning, what I'd like to do now is just remind you that there is an evaluation that I really would like you to complete. And at this point in the morning, I would like to ask if there's any other business, because after this, primary colleagues are very welcome to stay, or at this point, you are actually free to leave, because this next session is based around transition into adulthood. So you can stay or you're very welcome to leave, but it does give you time to complete your evaluations. So is there any other business this morning before we break off to do the secondary session? Anything else from any other colleagues? Just can't see you, that's all, my screen's up. But of course, you're all welcome to stay. I was just giving you a bit of a pre-warning that this session is aimed more at secondary colleagues.
Nothing from me, Lisa. Thank you.
No,
See you later
nothing.
then. Thank you.
No, you actually get some time back for once, which is nice.
Yes.
Okay, right, we will keep going then. So the next session, that's just another reminder there for your evaluation. The link is in the chat, okay? Okay, so I'd like to welcome this morning, I think there's Jess as well, isn't it, if I'm right in saying. We've got Heather Rogers, who's a group manager for all transitions for Live Well, actually, and she's brought, I think her colleague Jess as well is here today, and what they want to talk to you about is around that preparation for adulthood for children with complex needs, and really that preparation, because sometimes when you are preparing, it's really good to hear all of those messages. So I think I did let Heather in about 5 minutes ago, so I think she is here. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing just so we can see. Oh yeah, that's Heather. We can see her on the screen. Brilliant. Welcome, Heather, and welcome, Jess. I can see Jess as well. Am I okay just to hand straight over to you? Is that okay? Have you got anything to share, or are you just talking?
No, we're just talking.
Just talking.
So the reason
fine.
we're just talking is we've got a number of presentations. We've got Chief Social Worker coming and the Ofsted inspection. So we are just going to talk this morning.
That's fine, no problem at all.
Thank you for having us. So I think we wanted to just really make sure that everybody is aware that we exist as a team, and we just wanted to sort of let people know that you know, the preparation for adulthood is really important, and you know, the term preparation for adulthood is about the process of a young person leaving childhood into adulthood and the steps that are required to ensure that person has opportunities through employment, independent living, good health, and friends, family, and communities, and how, you know, the steps that should be maximised in an intervention on how that happens. So we, as a service, will work with people from the age of 14 through to adulthood. We may only offer an advisory role at that point because it's still a children's services responsibility, or through education, or, you know, any of those networks within the children's forum. But we're really happy to attend and give advice around adult steps. The other thing for us, it's about that interlink through adulthood, because when a child leaves children's services, they don't naturally come into adult services, and yet there is an assumption that people that have needs do. We work on a very strengths-based care act assessment that looks at a person's personal assets and well-being for us to be able to assess that individual need. It's really important for us to make those links as early as possible, because we do co-produce plans and we do work with families, and we want to be at those optimum meetings to be able to express a view around that development role. Jess, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think as you've said, it's just about knowing that we're here, so you can kind of guide parents and young people themselves to know what a process will look like from adulthood, and if you need guidance and advice around that, we want to be able to offer that so we can get it right for young people.
So one of the things that we have literally just been talking about this morning, because there's we're currently on Care First, we are moving to Eclipse, and we're still in the process of building Eclipse and what that might look like for us in transitions. So I have 2 transition worker and myself that work across the city with individuals that come in. Those individuals are triaged around need, and what we will do is we will attend and advise meetings for young people, probably up to the age of 17. When we get to around 17, we're pretty clear about what that individual need might look like going into the future, and there is the information from our health colleagues in the ICB around people with complex physical and health needs, that those assessments should be done early, as early as possible, so that it follows an individual through to adulthood. We also will attend any health and education plan meetings, and we're very keen to attend those to prevent information going into those plans that suggest that adult services will pick somebody up, because we might not necessarily do that. So we need to be involved as early as possible in all of those things. We will give advice and support, and we do have a reablement offer, which is about supporting a young person to think about their skill base and what they could achieve with some minimal support, and that could be something like travel training or finances, because most young people won't think ahead around managing a home, for example, because that they haven't had those opportunities or experiences to develop those skills. So that's pretty much what we do. In terms of referral process, you can refer direct in through the front door, which is LRSS service. They will want detail of that young person, and they want to be able to triage the urgency of that request. So it is, if you can give as much detail as possible, we can look at that, and I will keep in touch with Liz, who manages the front door, to explain that if it's about giving advice around a young person's development in any educational settings or EHCP plan, that we will do that, and it will be prioritised from our team. We see that as a real preventative measure and a supportive measure to ensure that young people do get those opportunities in employment and other situations throughout their life, developing friendships, all of those things, and making sure that their health inequalities are addressed at an early stage, so we don't get to adulthood and people describe getting to adulthood as falling off a cliff. It should never be that way. That preparation should start really very early on in a person's life, as it does, for all of us. So that's pretty much what we're about. We're happy to take any questions or explain anything that's not clear. And we do accept that the legislation between children's services and adults is so very different.
Any questions at all for Jess or Heather? can be quite a complex system to get your head around.
Yeah. The other thing is, I think was really important to acknowledge is when a person comes to adult services, because of the eligibility criteria and because they are financially assessed, people may withdraw. It is really important that we look at consent issues as they're approaching that 18th birthday and younger. But, you know, as an advisory role, I think it does set the relationship in a positive way, as opposed to just waiting for that assessment and things not be as a young person might consider.
I've just got something in the chat there. Please could we have contact details for referral?
Yep, so it is the 668,000 number, and then you ask for adult social care. I think there's a dial option on it. Press this, press that. And then the other is that you can make a referral online. So that's on Plymouth City Council website. So the referrals can go in that way.
Any other questions?
It's just to leave on like a note that in terms of the schools, for people with more complex needs, we have linked in with those, and we regularly visit, and we do track children through their systems so that hopefully nobody will fall through that gap, and that we start those relationships early. And that's essentially what our preparation's about. It's about formulating those links early to be able to provide guidance around legal frameworks. Excuse me. Especially legal frameworks around restrictions of people's liberty, because that starts at the age of 16, not 18. So it's about having all those plans in place prior to the young person becoming 18, and thinking about what that might mean for the young person. Why do we need to restrict somebody's liberty? You know, what's the risk there? And how we document that before the Court of Protection, how we assess people's capacity, and how we look at least restrictive options, and we're able to give any advice around any of those things that might impact. We're also willing and happy to come to any HCP plan in meeting, particularly around, you know, providing support around reasonable adjustments for individuals to gain access to employment, etc. Anything really that you can think of that will join into that linear process of adulthood. So the initial preparation should start at a very early age and continue through the natural development of that young person's life.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Heather. That's really useful.
Welcome. Bye.
Any other questions for Heather or Jess? No? Okay, no.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Heather. Thank you for the update. Thank you, Jess, for coming along today. I know you're both really busy, as we all are at the moment. Yeah. But no,
care.
thank you for your time. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
But that's everything on the agenda today, folks. That really just leaves us with any other business, the people that are left today in the virtual room. Claire.
It's just to give SENCOs a heads up that we are going to be doing a Preparing for Adulthood SEND conference on Tuesday, the 26th of September.
Fabulous.
So we will be inviting special schools to attend during the day. We will be sending out an invitation to mainstream schools if they have any young people that they wish to bring as a school visit. We are hoping that this will come under an educational visit. What else am I going to say? We're offering families the opportunity, with permission from the school, to bring young people if the school are unable to organise a trip. And we're also hoping that to persuade the stall holders to stay until 5 o'clock, so young people who want to attend school and come can attend after school hours. So that'll be on Tuesday, the 26th of September. It'll be in the Guildhall, our usual place. Talks so far, we have travel training. We've got, my mind's just gone blank. It's been a busy day already this morning. We're looking at benefits, travel training, access to apprenticeships and internships, and what was the other one I spoke to? Oh, and LPAs, legal powers of attorney, and wills and things like that.
Oh,
so we've
wonderful.
got a lawyer from Erwin Mitchell coming down. So he's going to talk to our families about that. So I think we'll probably have about 16 different talks from families to choose from. They can choose 4, whatever fits the need of their young person. I think that's it at the moment, but thank you very much. So please look
Brilliant.
out for some information.
That's lovely. Thank you, Claire. Thank you for the update. Anything else from anybody else this morning before we close? No? Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the briefing. You've got 10 minutes back. We actually clawed some time back at the end there this morning. So well done, everybody. So I will stop recording now.